Tell that he was like in college. Like he is in a so he's in a book where they go on hikes. He's kind of trying to take in all his options.
Your attention, please.
Kind of see like what that's like.
Can I get everybody's attention, please? Sorry. I actually don't have a microphone tonight, so gonna have to let our voice carry. Can we get the music down a little bit, maybe? How that? I think we have before.
Everybody sit down.
Sorry for getting a few minutes late. I know we wanted to give people also a little extra time for some parking because Kevin next door. And sorry for a little technical difficulties getting started. But welcome to the October meeting of the 28th Ward Democrats. I am Alderman Mike Ross, for those who don't know me. Tonight we are going to hear about some things on the November ballot. Here, I'm going to close this too. We have candidates here. Hopefully, have some candidates for the school board and others. We have some representatives from some of the ballot initiatives. We also have recommendations from the Missouri State Party on all the ballot initiatives, everyone, even kind of the minor ones, so we can talk about that. We can kind of go through that step by step. But I also want to just kind of remind everybody, and you know, I know we're going to have Parker up later, and I'll remind people at the end that there is no excuse in person early voting now across the city in a handful of locations, and probably for our ward, without a doubt, the most convenient location would be Schlafly Library. So Schlafly Library is going to be open 2 weeks before the election. So there's absolutely no excuse why every single person in the ward, you know, shouldn't have time to vote over those 2 weeks. So I guess let's just get started right away. I know we have a few representatives. Is anybody in a really big hurry? I'll be, and I know, you know, we usually try to take people first come first serve, but I was kind of late, so I don't know who that necessarily was. But if nobody is in a big hurry that's here to speak, I think we can start with Representative. Nope. I don't know. You popped up. I'm sorry, sir.
Absolutely, sure. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Dell Taylor. I am going to Jefferson City in January, barring anything bizarre. So I am looking forward to starting a new job, and I've actually already started doing some of the hard work. I went to Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago for the Congressional Black Caucus and sat through a number of sessions on energy policy. What are we going to be doing about energy production? How are we going to be transitioning our infrastructure for all of the EV, all of the electric vehicles that we are soon going to be driving? So how are we going to be plugging them out? Where are we going to get the energy policy for that? And even specifically, we have some photos, I'll share those. A number of debates and discussions going on with how we're going to be getting the mining rights in Africa, mining rights in a number of different places. And then how does that relate to us here in St. Louis? Well, some of you may have even already seen the news announcement that we're going to be building a new electric vehicle battery factory. All of those ores, all of those materials are going to be mined and going to be transported through and here to St. Louis. So this move to EV really is a very big thing, and I'm trying to get ahead of this and make sure that we are prepared and that we're doing the things that we necessarily can to make sure that we have the budget, that we're looking at the infrastructure, and that we're really looking at the special needs of St. Louis. Everyone doesn't have a garage, so where are we going to charge our phone? You know, where are we going to charge our cars? I actually saw for the first time people plug their cars into the street lights in London. Park on the street and there's the street light. You plug right in there. I should have taken a picture. But that's some of the stuff that I'm working on right now. And I am setting my legislative priorities for the session. So if you have some ideas, some things that you'd like to see us address in the legislature, please share with me. Let me know your thoughts and ideas. And then also, I'd like to introduce my two interns who've been helping me out with things. If you could, ladies, can stand up, Viviette Linden and Olivia Scott. They've been helping me out since my last two interns are at WashU, and they're busy with LSATs and graduating and all that good stuff. So I'm excited to have two new interns. So if you see me interviewing, if they ask you questions, your address, and things like that, and taking pictures, you're helping me to collect, better information. So with that, thank you very much, Mike. Any questions for me? Okay. I have some photos. I'm going to share those around. Feel free to browse through, and I'll talk to you guys a little later.
All right. Up next, we do have a candidate that just arrived, and she is in a hurry. And so I knew that she'd be at time, so I told her she could be here now. Emily Hubbard is running for school, so she's up next.
My name is Emily Hubbard. I am running for school board. I have 4 children in St. Louis Public Schools, 2 at a neighborhood elementary school and 2 at McKinley Middle School. They're amazing kids. We've been in St. Louis and in the district for about 6.5 years. I've gotten frustrated at how much I can get done with an angry white lady email compared to what some of my non-white peers can get done. And I just got frustrated about having to write the emails in general, so I decided to try and be the person who receives the emails instead, and hopefully to achieve some real change for the district. You may know we will be hiring a new superintendent, Dr. Adams. I'm so thankful for his long tenure. He's retiring, and if I'm elected, I'll be part of the group of people that will help choose the new superintendent. And I think, that's a really important decision. We need to make sure that we have a leader for our school district who values the voice of the parents, can empower the principals and everyone else to lead and to do the job that they've been trained for without being afraid that they'll get in trouble. And I have a lot of high hopes for the district. I would like to be part of making them come true. So I would like to get home and see my children. So I'll just pass my cards around, but if you have any questions, I'll answer them. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Do you have a question for Ms. Hubbard? You don't want a card, I'm sorry. All right, up next, how about we talk about Amendment 3, the ballot initiative. We have a couple representatives here for that. Up first, I see him getting ready to talk. How about we do Representative Wiley Price, I think, is going to speak against the.
It's probably a terrible time to actually have to use the restroom.
Oh, that's what you're getting up? Sorry. No
Sorry
worries.
about
And so is the other candidate here, the representative? I thought I saw him.
Oh, he may be in the restroom as well.
Okay.
He was just here.
Maybe this isn't.
So maybe next time.
Yeah. All right. Next time. Well, how about our collector of our license collector, Mavis Thompson is here. She's on the ballot. And as a old friend of our award, she likes to say a few words.
Just wanted to say thank you so very much for your early endorsement. It's my first time in the history of my 5 citywide elected positions that I'm running unopposed without a Democratic candidate. And that's a blessing for me. I had just broken my ankle. I'm still getting over that. So 3 bones broken, COVID, trying to knock on doors and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so I stand before you. We're doing some really wonderful things at City Hall. And I start off with City Hall because we've always talked about the archaic internet, all of the IT. And so we're finally trying to get on the same page where all of the offices that really have something to do with licensing, mainly the license collector's office and the collector of revenue with the earnings tax and things like that, that we're finally getting on board to try to do something that we can talk to each other electronically. And so that's a big deal for me. It's a big deal for myself, a big deal for Greg Daly, as well as the building division, because to get a license in a brick and mortar, you have to have an occupancy permit somewhere, things like that. And so rather than sending the taxpayer, okay, well, you got to go upstairs to the building division, come back down. Oh, okay, well, you got to go down the hall to collector revenue. And so we're really excited to get that done. Not that it didn't start before, but it's finally, it takes a lot of time for the wheels to get really turning and to do that. And so I know that Madam Mayor is here, Lyda is here, and I wanted to thank her for her precursor, trying to get that stuff started in City Hall. And so it's finally coming to fruition.
Thank goodness.
Exactly. Thank goodness. With all of our meetings, Madam Mayor knows that I would always start out with, what are we going to do about IT? And so we're doing that. And some of the things in the license collector's office that we've seen besides IT is the same that's happening everywhere. We have a staffing shortage. But with my office, I'm okay with that for right now, only because we live off of the fees that the state allows us to keep from business licenses. And so businesses are still down. And so the revenue is still down. It was very interesting. Just got a call from the deputy comptroller the other day saying, my goodness, your numbers are really, really down. Can you explain why? And I said one thing, COVID. People are still trying to come back. Businesses are still trying to come back. As you see, when you go anywhere, not only St. Louis, but the United States, there's not enough personnel. There's not enough workers. Restaurants don't have workers. Hotels don't have workers. The airport, everybody's struggling to try to find workers. And also with that comes competitive pay. And so, we're so used to saying, oh, well, we just pay, type of government wages, but we have good benefits. Well, right now, the potential employees that are coming along, they don't care about benefits. They want the dollar, right there in their pocket. So those are some of the things that we're struggling with. We have some legislation, I talked about that last time, that we're going to be proposing. One is that we increase the late fee, the business license application fee, mainly $200, has not changed in decades. And so what we're proposing, what we plan to propose, is that we increase the late penalties. And so we're only going after the bad actors, because I can go up and down right now, up and down Del Mar, and probably 2 out of 3 of the businesses will not be licensed. And you'll think, oh, hey, yeah, they have to be licensed. They're open on Del Mar. They're not. And so we can't be everywhere at the same time. So we look to you for eyes and ears and different complaints and things like that. So if you go in a business, just kind of look on the wall and see if you see the yellow goldenrod business license there. And so I also try in my own neighborhood. I got kind of mad one time. I was saying I went to a couple of businesses and I said, why are all the businesses that I like to go to not licensed? And so once we do that and stop patronizing these folks, and I actually call them just as like any other, I call them criminals, because they're robbing us of the tax dollars that is needed so desperately here in the city of St. Louis. Because by state statute and ordinance, our money goes everywhere, from public schools, the young lady that came in that's running for the school board, from public schools to museums, to the convention, tourists, and also to the city's coffer. And so we bring in, probably pre-COVID, we were right at about 61 to $64 million that we contributed to the city's coffers and all of the other entities that allow us. Right now, and I have my compliance officer with me. And so where are we now?
close to 40 mil.
Okay, so we're right at 40 mil. So as you can see, 20 mil makes a big difference. But until the businesses start coming back up and getting back on board, so we're proposing the late fee. The other thing that we saw was a loophole, and that is in one of the state statutes that says that if you have a sex offender, if you're on the sex offender registry, then you can't have a business license, but the business has to be associated with children. Like you can't, have a business that is near the children. Well, to me, that's a loophole because, for instance, you hire a contractor comes to your home, your children are home, children let the contractor in. Well, that's a private home. It's not a place where children would normally be, like a daycare center and things like that. So we're going to be looking at those two things to try to button up, some of the loose language that we can with some of the state statutes and the ordinances. So again, I want to say how grateful I am for the privilege to serve as your license collector. And I really do mean that. We've been there since 2013. And so thank you for 4 more years, hopefully after November 8th. Yes, sir.
So just 2 questions. One is, how do the license fees, as well as the late fees, compare to anything else in the region? That's one question. Second question is, when this database comes together to pull the building division, all of those sort of things together, will that help to resolve the fact that folks are getting occupancy permits for businesses that they are not licensed, so therefore they're not paying?
Thank you so much. I'll take the last question first.
Can you repeat
Regarding the
question?
ones with the, and he was talking about folks having occupancy permits without a business license. When I came into office in 2013, it was the first time that all of these entities ever met together. We had never met together before. And so we all sat down at the table, including it's a municipal violation to do that. We had the judges on board, we had the police department on board, health department, collector of revenue, building division. And we had already drafted, my office had already drafted what was called a comprehensive business closure policy, where all of these ideas would come together. So we all met, we all agreed that these are the things that we would do. And one of them was that we would not issue out a occupancy permit without the license collector's office know. Okay, and so time rolls on and we start going around checking businesses, because that's what we do all day. And on the weekends and in the evenings, our compliance officer can testify to that. We work all the time. And so anyway, we found out about this loophole, so to speak. And so we just had a meeting 2 weeks ago where we brought again everybody back to the table because you have new players. So we brought everybody back to the table and said, hey, do we agree with this policy that we adopted in 2013? Everybody said, yeah. You have anything to add? A few people had something to add. So we really think that we got a handle on it right now.
How do you verify, where's the compliance component? Because I think accountability is a key component, because you mentioned it was mentioned years ago. Now here we are, fast forward, and it's not being done. So, part of it is there will always be turnover. You said staffing is short. We know that some of these offices get turned over left and right. City government has a number of people who've been there for 20, 30, 40 years. So how do we put things in place systematically that don't allow for these things to fall to the wayside?
And we have my compliance officer sitting right there. And so he can go ahead and answer that question about not letting the ball drop again.
And to your point, what we've done is in our meeting, and thank you, Madam Vice Director, what we've done in our meeting is that we try to streamline the process in that as we get an opportunity to communicate with the departments, because of the fact that you can get an occupancy permit for where you're staying before you get your business license, because your occupancy permit, the business license is not required to have the occupancy permit. However, the business license is required before you open up the business. So what we're trying to do is get a handle on whatever occupancies that come in that may potentially become businesses later on in the future, we have our eyes on those. And so the building division is working with us to see to it that we get a list of all of those businesses, so we too can work with them in terms of issuing business licenses only to those who have qualified and met the criteria.
And one other component to that is that when the building division, they have field reps just like we have field reps. And so what we all decided, and the same thing with the assessor's office, is that if you're going out to look at a business, it doesn't make sense that we can't all go together. And so we decided now that we would all go together, the assessor's office, the building division, license collector, collector of revenue, health department, fire safety, that we would all kind of get together and go out to do one inspection. And so I think that that's going to solve it, but with this list that we're talking about, we hope that we can solve that. And with all of that talking, I forgot your first question.
The first question was how business fees, the license fees as well as the late fee increase, how does that compare to the region as it relates to businesses? Because one thing we don't want to do is discourage businesses from operating here compared to other regional competition in our collective setting.
Our fees are, like I said, haven't been changed for years and years and years, and they're comparable, although the system isn't comparable, but the fees are comparable throughout our metro area. The fees are comparable. What we do is we go on a graduated business license scale, and so that looks at the number of employees that are there in your business. Now, of course, only in the city area do we have the earnings tax, but that's a whole nother question out of my control. And so with that being said, they're comparable. But again, we're not attacking you on a business license fee. We're only going after the bad actors because the state allows us to do two penalties, late filing and late payment. And so none of those have been raised for decades. So I believe that you'll see a difference if our legislation that we're proposing is passed, that we'll have less and less and less bad actors.
Something that you have to make clear is occupancy is an upfront one-time fee that an establishment pays. License fee for continuing to operate in the city is an annual.
Yes.
Right.
So you can't really confuse the two as occupancy and license, like it's an annual thing, they're not things. They're totally different.
Exactly. Thank you, Ms. Lilly. And she was just talking about the difference in the fees. To have an occupancy permit, you can keep that almost forever. We had just asked that question the other day. How often do you have to renew? Because we really didn't want to keep on renewing people that had occupancy permits 20, 30 years old. Surely somebody needed to go back out and inspect. But again,
I think a lot of municipalities, the fire department comes in once a year to just check the safety of the establishment. That is not an occupancy permit, but it is what they call.
right, it's called a fire safety
Fire
inspection,
safety
yes.
inspection, yes.
And so you're exactly correct. That's all that I have, and thank you so much again for the honor and the privilege to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I don't usually host the meetings. Our president, Ann Killa, does, and she always introduces everybody, and I forgot to do it. So I'm the alderman, Mike Ross, but Ann Killa is our president. We do have our treasurer here, Deborah Lovelace, for those who don't know. Our brand new committee man, Parker Lovelace, is here. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, secretary, and our new-ish treasurer, Bridget Sims, is here as well. So, up next, I want to continue the discussion. So, we're going to talk about amendments in a little bit, and the official position of the state party is that they don't have a position on Amendment 3, the legalization of marijuana. They're pro legalization of marijuana, but they don't have an official position on this amendment. So we have a representative from the campaign, Chris Chelsea, to talk about Amendment 3. So, Chris.
Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Chesley. I'm born and raised here in St. Louis. I started working on marijuana legalization back in 2010 with Show Me Cannabis. Eventually, that turned into New Approach Missouri. We legalized medical marijuana eventually in 2018. After that, I started working with the campaign to do now what is now Legal Missouri 2022. There's a lot of different things that a lot of people have said about the legalization of marijuana. Either most people know they're either for it or against it, but there are a lot of nuances. There's a lot of things that go into this. First, I think as an advocate that's been working for this for over 10 years, I wanted to push this as far as we could possibly go here in the state of Missouri. I wanted to show the rest of the country that Missouri is as progressive as we can be when it comes to marijuana. And I think we did that. I worked on a committee with 30 people that were all advocates, and I also worked on a committee with people that in the industry. And I will tell you, none of us got what we wanted. Not everyone got exactly what we wanted. We all worked together, we compromised, and that's what I think is going to make Amendment 3 one of the most well-rounded that you're going to see in the entire country. There's quite a few different things. First of all, possession limits. Missouri is going to want to have one of the higher possession limits in the state of Missouri, or in the country. And at 3 ounces, it's less than what our current medical program allows a medical patient to have, but it's also almost an ounce higher than almost every other state. Colorado does, I believe, 2 ounces. Washington State does an ounce. Michigan does an ounce. California does 2 ounces. So we would still be much more progressive when it comes to possession limits, but still less than what we allow our medical patients that we've allowed for the past 2 years to possess. Another thing that we have on there is expungement. Expungement is something that we absolutely need to have. I personally don't believe that this goes far enough, but after talking with criminal defense attorneys, advocates for many different communities, we ended up settling on automatic expungement of up to 3 pounds. Now that person has to have a non-violent marijuana conviction. They have to have no sale to a minor, and they have to have not driving while intoxicated under marijuana. Those 3 things are pretty standard across the country. I believe the next closest expungement initiative that has passed in the United States was 500 grams. That was over in Illinois, which is 500 grams, if you're not familiar, is just over a pound, a little over. But that's also not an automatic expungement. So I believe that this is one of the more progressive expungements that we have seen in the country. Another thing is our tax rate. We've seen tax rates for recreational marijuana anywhere from 6.35%, which is Connecticut, all the way up to 37%, which is Washington State. Washington State was one of the very first states to sell recreational marijuana in the country. And I believe our 6% tax rate with an optional up to local municipalities 3% tax rate is extremely fair and comparable. I would say the average tax rate in the country right now is 15%. And so we would come in right around 10% if the local municipality elected to have that additional 3% tax rate. Cannabis lounges is a big thing. You're starting to hear about them left and right. So that also creates a lot of tourism, and that'll create tax dollars. We see some states that are just now starting to allow them. Most states, when they passed recreational, they did not allow cannabis lounges or anything of that nature. These are things that are starting to be pushed through the legislature, such as Colorado. They're just now starting to do cannabis lounges, even when they did a constitutional cannabis amendment. for their state. So we're going to start off with a lot of things that other states have not had for quite some time. We're kind of piggybacking off of what other progressive states have done when it comes to cannabis legalization. Parental protections. Missouri is going to be one of, I believe, 5 states that will not allow someone that is legally using cannabis to, if there is a divorce, a custody battle, to not hold that against them. We don't really say, well, somebody uses alcohol, unless it's a clear and evident issue. So I think that that's a pretty big issue that we are going to have built in. We also have job protections built into Amendment 3. So anyone that uses cannabis cannot be fired strictly for the presence of cannabis in their system. If they are visibly impaired, they can absolutely be fired. People are not allowed to use cannabis on the clock unless their employer allows it. They can not be visibly impaired on the clock unless their employer allows it. So what this is doing is this is protecting people that are going home at the end of the night and using cannabis off the clock and coming to work the next day completely sober and still being allowed to work and not fear that they're losing their job. That is something that actually last month, California and New York just implemented in their legalization. There's a few other states that have done it here and there, but out of the 19 states that currently have legalization, Missouri not only would be the 20th, but we would be in the top, I would say 7, I believe it is, that would actually have those job protections automatically built in that have taken other states years to do. We also do allow home grow. And I know that's scary for a lot of people, but we also allow our medical patients currently to have home grow. We will expand that just a little bit. We do believe if I had my way, everyone should be allowed to do it no matter what. It's a plant. But we also have people that are very concerned about marijuana and they don't want it just growing on the street side. They don't want it growing in the parks. They don't want it, just being anywhere. So it is still regulated. It still is 6 plants that has to be under a lock and key. It has to be, completely enclosed. And that is pretty much the standard. Any state that has recreational, I would say for the most part, we are completely on par with what they have there. We don't really expand on there except for our Medigram. Expands a little bit for people that are able to caretake for other medical patients. Amendment 3 does expand a little bit on that, but for the most part, we would stay pretty standard when it comes to home grow and recreational. Additional licenses. So this is very tricky, and I know this is a very, very hot topic, and it has to be treated with care, is micro licenses and people in communities that have been targeted in the war on drugs. And micro licenses are very new. Not many states have done micro licenses. We're not sure exactly how they turn out. I'll be completely honest with you there. California is implementing them. Illinois is currently implementing them. New York is working on something to do these micro licenses. And they are geared towards people that have been affected by the war on drugs, communities that have been specifically targeted by the war on drugs, and specifically marijuana. We know for a fact during the height of the war on drugs that there have been claims, oh, I smell marijuana, I smell this, I do this, and it was probable cause. We're trying to end that, and we're trying to give back to communities that have been affected on that. And there's very few things that the Missouri state law allows us to do. So we've worked on things that try to get us those communities eligible, and only those communities eligible for these licenses. I would like to say we know how they turn out, but I can't. I can't honestly tell you that. This is something that we wanted to add in because we know that this is something very progressive and something that we want to see Missouri do. And we don't know if it's going to be perfect or not. So those are some of the big key components of marijuana legalization. It's not always fun. It's not always pretty. There's a lot of back and forth, and those are just kind of the general ideas. I will tell you, I was just asked 3 hours ago to come here and speak to you guys. So I did not have a whole lot prepared, and I apologize on that. So I just tried to go over the topics as quickly as possible and then answer as many questions as possible. I know we have people here that are against Amendment 3, and they have good reason. Cannabis is still an experiment. Legalization is still an experiment. So all we can do in the state of Missouri is try to be the most progressive than the last state and push further so that the next state can do better. And that's, as an advocate, has always been my stance. So any questions?
Chris, you are so passionate. You are so good in what you're doing. I wish you would work on a topic which really, really, really makes us to be one of the more progressive states in the nation. I don't know why you will, I don't know, it's not a personal attack on you, but isn't just decriminalizing marijuana, wouldn't that be a
Well, marijuana never should have been criminalized in the first place. I think we all agree on that. And we all know that it was extremely racist war that was started.
Well, yeah,
No,
that's,
don't use that.
It was.
Don't use that.
It was.
Don't use that.
for a white man, it was a racist. All right, but to a black man,
I'll leave all of that out. As an old pharmacist, I know the history, and it's really bad for most of us, so I'll stop there.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Thank you for the good information. So many employers now test before they hire you, and they can test either randomly or, intermittently. Will this eliminate their ability to do that in construction or in, trash truck drivers or, how does that work?
So Amendment 3 does have limited conditions on job protections. So if you're an airline, limited protections on jobs. So if you're an airline pilot, probably best that if you test positive for THC, they still will be able to hold that against you. If you're a truck driver, what?
Can't fly.
I don't know. I've heard some other people that can.
Not mile high.
But there are certain things of people when you're taking other lives into your hands that there should be.
What about a trash truck driver? Or what about a over-the-road truck driver?
Is that specified in the language?
I'm not educated on what the details of that, but would this prevent those employers from?
I believe it's more transit oriented when it comes to the language on whether they can or cannot. So a trash truck driver, not necessarily under my interpretation.
Not necessarily.
A trash truck driver or
You would not be able to test for that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so there are nuances in every state that legalizes marijuana that have to go to the courts and they figure things out. And that's kind of the game that's played on this, unfortunately.
How much is 3 pounds?
It's
I just don't know what
Size-wise?
I don't know.
so I guess it depends on.
Couple of Ziplocs?
I guess it depends on what decade you got it and where you got it from. But it's a healthy amount. The average person at a medical marijuana dispensary is allowed up to 4 ounces a month. So every 4 months, they're allowed to have gone through a pound. So each year for 812. So
So 3
yeah.
pounds is
So
about
basically, an average medical marijuana patient
Way more.
could go with their current allotments, go up to the a little under, but yeah, I mean it is a decent
Why-
amount.
I mean, does,
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to do
no,
a bunch
it's
of
okay.
math at the same time.
Does being allowed to have in your possession 3 pounds?
So this does not allow you to have 3 pounds.
Oh,
This
okay.
this is only expunging criminal records
Okay.
that had a non-violent
Okay,
offense
thank you. I
of
screwed up.
3 pounds at less automatically.
I understand.
People, and I personally believe it should have been much higher, personally.
Much-
My personal opinion is we should expunge all marijuana convictions, no matter what.
Okay.
But at the same time, there are, after a certain level of possession, federal law takes over. And according to the criminal defense attorneys that we worked with, anything really over 3 to 4 pounds is usually charged federally. And so what we did after this
Under
3
the
pound mark,
assumption that you're gonna
yeah,
distribute.
after this 3 pound mark,
Yeah.
it really didn't fall under state law anymore. It
I
fell
got
under federal law, unfortunately. I personally believe no matter what it was, or where, when, or how much it was, we should have expunged these records because I personally don't believe cannabis is nearly as harmful as many other things that we already allow. Personally.
Roger.
Yes.
You mentioned I think
Sorry.
you said, I'm sorry.
Thank you for your answers.
I think you mentioned the micro licenses.
Yes.
But I didn't catch what they actually were. Or
So micro licenses are.
repeat the question.
He asked what micro licenses actually were. So micro licenses are something that I believe it was California first initially did. And the whole goal behind it is that there were people that were being barred from entering this industry because they have previous convictions for doing the exact same thing that people are making money off of legally now. That is a problem. And so the idea behind micro licenses is that these people that have been targeted one way or another and have lost the ability or been tried to be kept out of this industry have a way to get into this industry. And so one of the things that we did here is we worked with people from different organizations to try to make sure that we can narrow down and make sure that people from communities that were targeted are able to have first come to these micro licenses. And then I'm not the biggest, I don't know exactly how micro licenses will work, like I said before. This is something that's new. It's something that was just implemented when California passed recreational, and it was something that had never been done before that. Illinois is trying to implement something like it right now. I believe we're going to be the third, maybe fourth state that actually does it. And so we don't have any long-term data on it. All I know is that it's something that if we did not put in there, would have been a slap in the face to anyone that voted for recreational.
If I may.
So when it comes to these micro licenses, what we also added is people that are running these micro licenses, as the state expands its marijuana program, for every license that's going to be added to what would be considered the standard industry, they have to grant one of these licenses to somebody in the micro license business. So that will take them from this micro license business and put them into the bigger aspect. Am I the biggest fan of that? I don't know, because I don't know how it's going to work, and I haven't seen it. And we haven't seen it in any other state, but I do know that this is a little bit more progressive than what California did and what Illinois did. Yes, sir.
On the safety issue, has there been any discussion or consideration as relates to what has transpired in California with the fentanyl being added to the marijuana process?
Yes, absolutely. Everything in the state of Missouri has to be tested. It all has a seed to sale tracking system in the state. So as soon as a plant becomes over a certain height, it gets tagged, and then usually about 2 to 3 months later, that plant can be took into a flowering area to where it will actually start fruiting or flowering, which produces the actual smokable, usable marijuana. And the entire time that plant has been tracked since it was a baby to where it gets processed, to when it gets shipped to manufacturing, to when it gets shipped to dispensers. So it is tracked the entire time. People can see just about who was in what facility while that plant was being processed the entire time. And then before that actually gets to the dispensary, a sample of that product has to go to testing to make sure that there is nothing wrong with it. Whether it be mold, whether it be pesticides, whether it be nutrients, heavy metals, any type of thing that we normally wouldn't want to consume as people in general. And I believe you had a question.
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that if you already have a license to sell medical marijuana, you'll be grandfathered in
Yes.
in terms of getting a license. But
Yes.
if the number of licenses that are issued is not expanded, it means that only the people who are currently selling it will have an opportunity to sell it.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
correct?
No, you are correct. And so there's a couple different things on that. Is one,
repeat the question?
So in Amendment 2 for medical
Chris, I'm sorry.
marijuana.
Can you repeat the question?
So what she asked is current medical marijuana license holders are going to be the only ones that are allowed to get recreational licenses. And there is some truth to that. I'm not going to try to beat around the bush on that in any way, shape, or form. So the way that this is working is that the people that applied for the medical marijuana licenses and got them will be able to transition to do medical and recreational. The way that we're bringing in new licenses is through the micro licenses, because what we found, and even in my personal opinion, is what happened with the medical marijuana licenses is that there were quite a few hiccups through the scoring process of what we saw in the state of Missouri. The scoring was all over the place, and that's why these micro licenses are going to be through a lottery. That it's supposed to be through a blind lottery, and hopefully it will be checked up upon. There's someone that's supposed to be appointed to make sure that this is done correctly and everything. So just like in other states, yes, this will automatically allow, or not automatically, it will allow people that have medical licenses to apply to the state first to have recreational, so that we can start generating tax revenue out of this and start doing this and hopefully bring cannabis out of the underground market.
The state limits the number of licenses that can be issued. That means nobody else will be able to come into the business.
So the state is currently limiting licenses, and they have fears of if there's an overabundance of licenses that cannabis will spill out into the underground market. And when we passed Amendment 2, we set a minimum number of licenses that the state has to issue. There was no cap on licenses that could be issued. Are there people that try to make sure that that doesn't happen? Yes. Is there anyone holding the state back from doing that? No. The state is allowed to issue those licenses at their will, and they have already issued over the number of minimum licenses, but they have not freely given licenses out. And that's all I can really speak to on that.
Can you say why we're over the limit?
Yes, people have appealed their decisions due to, like I said earlier, people have appealed their decision, the state's decisions on licensing through the point system, which I already said I don't agree with and did not see it being very accurate.
Why we have to be more progressive than California?
I'm not, so California, you're not allowed to get expunged until you complete your probation or parole. And I think that if we're gonna legalize something, we should not have someone still sitting in jail for something that is already legal, and then once they finish their parole, they get expunged, we should get them out of jail, because I don't want to spend tax dollars on keeping somebody in prison for something that is now legal. Sorry.
Okay, I'll just say this is my personal experience from Arkansas. My sister tried to get a license to sell marijuana on our family farm, which was my mother's property. And it was so corrupt, so convoluted, so biased to the top players. And she also appealed on the point system and amongst other people, and it got tossed out because it was so corrupt, but it was not favoring, it was favoring some large players and not favoring some people. And I mean, but a lot of my relatives that are from poor rural Arkansas have done a lot of jail time for drugs. And so, you know, not my sister, but it just felt like a somewhat of an inequity.
Right.
And I'll also say, like, as a psychologist, we do a lot of research. And marijuana is very analogous to alcohol. It can be very dangerous or very carefully used, but the jail time and the penalties are, if it was totally different on its impact.
Yeah.
And what I've seen since I've been practicing psychology is really the impact of prescription drugs and how those have impacted things more than almost anything else. So I think we have to think about our decisions as a society and the impacts of those, and are those equitable to the people and who's being affected by what? And think about it holistically. And I don't know what the right or wrong answers are, but that's my opinion.
That's good.
Yeah.
I want to take exception to a point that you made
We do.
earlier about the expungement being automatic. It's not, as I read the bill, it's not automatic, but requires the person to make application
It
to
is.
the court, to the court. And then if the court agrees,
Yes, that is over the 3 pound. Anything under the 3 pounds is an automatic expunction. As long as there is, as long as it's non-violent, doesn't involve driving under the influence, and doesn't include a sale to a minor. That's not automatic.
That's not
4 different.
All right, any last question? Any questions? Gotta move on. All right. Thank you, Chris, for being here. Appreciate it. All right, keep the conversation on Amendment 3 going. We have State Representative Wiley Price speaking against it.
How's everybody tonight?
Good.
Awesome. There was just a lot of information disseminated. I'll try to go back and kind of give my opinion on some of the things that I heard tonight and what's actually in the text. You guys brought up some very good points just in the listening about the micro license. The micro license is pretty much, it was phoned in last minute. And let's just kind of go through the history of New Approach and how we got here. During the conversation of New Approach, there was a lot of conversation about minority inclusion and making sure that we had included the people that were most disenfranchised during the hundreds of years of this problem. And they missed the ball pretty bad on that. Also, obviously, anybody that spent their time and money trying to get a license, they were throwing their money into a black hole and they didn't know. We found out later on the back end that the process was more of a hand-picked kingmaker situation than it was an application where you paid somebody, get that application, know the answers, the scores were flawed. The same people that wrote New Approach are now writing Amendment 3. You could say a large percentage of the people that are in MOCAN and Amendment 3 are the people that currently have licenses and are writing this to kind of grandfather themselves in long term, my opinion. Why would you have caps on something? We don't have caps on anything when it comes to free and fair markets. When it comes to business, you want to open up a bar, you can go north of Del Mar, open up a bar pretty much anywhere you want. License collectors here to speak on that. I really want to speak to the portion because this is something that I've been hearing in a lot of my debates with Amendment 3 about the black market and how if we let go of caps and we take the limits off caps, it'll open up this black market. The caps are feeding the black market in a way that you will never understand. The caps make it so the dispensaries have to compete with the dispensaries. And the streets get to say, oh, y'all selling ounces for $450 or half grams of this vape for $60. The streets get to say, oh, we get to go to California and Oklahoma and all of these other places, and we sell it for half the price. Whatever it is in the dispensary, we want to sell it at half the price. So nobody ever has to really frequent the dispensaries because the competition is in the streets, not in the dispensary. If it's a simple market system, right? If my competition is down the block and there's only so many in the congressional area, that's what I have to compete with. But if I remove the caps, and if you're doing good business, you stay open. If you're doing bad business, you close. That alleviates the black market because everybody has to drop their prices on the cannabis to compete with the next market. You understand what I'm saying? It's supply and demand, 101. So this boogie monster of the black market with the caps it doesn't make any sense when I actually think about it. The micro licenses are like I said, kind of a kiddie table. It was touted. I have problems with a lot of things. I have problems how this was touted from the beginning. It was touted as a second opportunity to help minorities, and we would create this special license for you, right? Where you can't do any business with anybody with an existing license. So let's think about it like liquor. I'm getting a liquor license, but they're going to give me a micro liquor license. Where I'm in a state where I have to get all my liquor from in the state. So if I'm getting my liquor, that means I got to ferment my liquor. I got to wait for it to, do all the things, get my wheat, my barley. I got to make this stuff, right? So I'm that much longer and that much further behind the 8-ball. Then when I actually get it out into market, I got a glass ceiling on how much I can even produce, right? So if I am already a license holder, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I get to say I did something for the minorities and continue to make my money, as well as watch minorities go to jail for the same crop that I'm turning millionaires into billionaires off of. Essentially, is what it does. This creates A, B, C, and D felonies if you have too much. I don't understand how we're legalizing and penalizing at the same time. When I think about the application of the actual bill, okay, say I'm a bad man. I'm out here just smoking joints in front of the police. I get this first ticket for $100. Then I get the second and third ticket for $100, which puts me in the courts. Say I don't get a lawyer, and now I got this charge for smoking in public, which is a misdemeanor. But then do I get to use this expungement system that they have?
Where it's decriminalized.
Well, this is the whole state, though. Right? We're not just talking about the city where it's decriminalized. We're talking about the state of Missouri. So do I get to use that same process and then go back to the state, have them spend more money sending me through this process to get it automatically expunged? Which brings me to my next issue. The expungement is not automatic. Again, please be honest with me about how you're touting this campaign. If you're going to say, hey, we're making a second license for micro licenses for minorities, how about we have some prereqs in there that are specific to minorities? I was just in a debate with the writer of Amendment 3 just a couple of days ago at UPSL, and he said out of his own mouth, you're right, there's nothing in here that's race specific. Then how is it a second round for minorities? It's actually a second round for people who are already kind of in and want to get in. And, if you're my son or my nephew, then I can relinquish my license and then sell it. And then this lottery process. I already don't trust your initial process for all of the obvious reasons that have been played out in the last 2 years with the courts. Now we have a lottery. There's no specifics on how this lottery works. There's no specifics. My biggest issue with how this bill is written after reading legislation for the last 4 years, it's very vague where it should be very specific. And it's very specific where it should be very vague. I.e., there's a portion here they talk about eliminating misdemeanors. They should have a list of every misdemeanor that is being listed in the criminal code that's being eliminated. There's kind of lost my thought there for a second. There are portions that say, again, the expungement. The judges can deny you for good cause. somebody that reads legislation all the time, I need to go back to the beginning of the legislation and see in the definitions where it says good cause and what a good cause is. Right? And it's these kind of this vague language that is going to definitely be weaponized in communities of poor and minorities, which is what it is. The stop and sign is a problem. We're in a state right now, as you mentioned, where we're trying to decriminalize marijuana, and this has a stop and sight situation where if a cop sees you smoking in an unapproved public area, there's nothing in there that defines what an unapproved smoking area is. He can stop and he can give you this ticket. Now, the problem that I have with that is we're currently in a criminal justice phase where we're trying to pull together our police and general public relationships. I don't want the police interacting with my youth or anybody else in these neighborhoods for something that is minor and that we're already getting away from. And then we got another Mike Brown, we got another protest, we got another whatever, and now my whole city is in uprise because somebody decided to start messing with somebody over something that was minor. So that's how I ideate that happening. In regards to hospitality, there should be a portion in here about where you can actually smoke. They left it up to local governments, which means that if you're driving from here to Missouri or here to Kansas City, you need to know each county you can be stopping and hanging out, or if you want to keep going, or you need to know that, right? And so it's not a blanket situation. I guess bottom line is just pretty poorly written. There are a lot of portions in here that don't really explain to the end. The expungement. There's no portion in here that specifies which department is going to actually look at your record and say, okay, this rectifies you for an expungement. This disqualifies you for expungement. Which I've been up there for 4 years. I can tell you either of the 16 departments want to deal with this, so it's going to be a game of hot potato until somebody does something, or we get the courts involved, which is more money to the state. Like, it's just poorly written. How do you not specify which department is going to do what is supposed to be the biggest portion of this campaign, the expungement? And there's no nuts and bolts on how this actually works. So a lot of this sounds really good. I got to be honest, I was a fan of A3 before I actually sat down and read the 40 pages. When you actually read the language, it doesn't spell out what is being touted. Specifically when it comes, like I said, to helping Black and brown communities and poor communities and the people that this bill is supposed to be helping the most, it does zero for. In fact, there are certain positions where it puts them behind the 8 ball a little bit further. There's a portion in here where the legislature has to actually decide where some of the money goes, which I thought was kind of interesting because this year in the legislature, we had 2704, which was going to be the legalization bill. Another portion of this bill that I have a problem with is that there's no criminal justice reform. It's very tone deaf in regards to criminal justice reform. You have to finish out your sentences. There's no commuting. There's no true expungement. In 2704, we were offering a 6-week program where we would have classes and teach people exactly what was going on the outside, the new laws, what the businesses were, and how the plant was operating. And then you had the opportunity or the option to go into a halfway house that was actually a cultivation facility. So you come right out and get to work. We were trying to lower our prison population, reduce recidivism, and raise our workforce. That is what a bill like this should be doing, right? It should cover every portion of the social issue, not just what we want. And when I look at it, it looks like what they want is to be able to be, again, kingmakers and who can sell and who can produce cannabis. Those who already have licenses, as was mentioned by Ms. Lovelace earlier, those who already have licenses, they have the option to automatically just switch over. They don't have to apply for any more industry license. That's a red flag for me. We want caps, but everybody who is already in can just go and go for it, but we want caps. Well, why are we not capping the people that are already in the game and that already have this advantage? So for me, as a black man, this piece of legislation doesn't even start to go in the direction of helping minorities. And as somebody who's been making $36,000 a year, it doesn't help poor people either. So I think that, again, they missed the ball, and a lot of the conversations that I've been having, the undertone has been, yeah, we all know that's kind of messed up, but free weed, man. And it's like, I'm sorry, I can't jump behind that. There are some major social issues in this that are not being addressed or not being spoken to. And I think that's my biggest concern with it, is that, again, we're making millionaires, billionaires, and we're still locking people up for things that people are out here making a lot of money for. There's no rehab programs involved in this. If somebody goes off the rails and they get a little weird, there's nothing in here that helps people. It just helps the corporation. And I think that's pretty much the long short for me. I'm trying to look over my notes quickly and make sure I didn't miss anything of note. Again, I was going to speak to tax money a little bit. The tax money from the adult use can be spent without legal authority, without legislative authority, but includes funding the automatic expungement program. Which, again, when I think about the application of this, it doesn't make sense to me in how it's going to actually work with the state departments, especially when you're waiting on the legislature to then okay how these funds should be used. Now, in regards to our veterans, they were supposed to get the first chunk of money from 2019. That money was caught up in courts. So they still haven't really gotten all of that money. I'm afraid that we're kind of going down the same road with this in regards to how the money is going to be set up. Because, I mean, basically, the state fiscal budget is done until July 1, 2023. So we have to wait that long, at least, till we find out exactly where the money goes. Now, as he said, they worked with 30 people to write this legislation. None of those 30 were legislators. And it creates these kind of problems when you don't have somebody in the room to say, that sounds good, but like the nuts and bolts of that aren't actually going to work. And here's why. Let's see. Leftover money will be split between veterans homes, veteran funds, treatment programs, and public defenders. So the treatment program kind of goes back to what I just said as far as like actually helping people that need the help. The public defender portion is a waste of the 2% tax, in my opinion. We just gave, again, not having legislators in the room, you don't have the opportunity to ask these questions. But public defenders just received $64 million from the state legislature this year. So we just fully funded the public defender's office, which is a win for the Democrats, honestly. But that's more money that we don't need to go to the public defenders. We've already wiped their caseloads. So where does that other 2% go? So again, this is poorly written. A lot of the good portions seem like they were phoned in the last moment. And I don't like any organization that gets behind false representation of my community. When I talked to these people, they said the NAACP statewide was behind this. They said the NAACP St. Louis County was behind this. I got on the phone with John Bowman. I got on the phone with Rod Chappell. They knew nothing of this. So my biggest issue away from the actual text of this is that they've been coming into my community touting that the community is behind this. And then when I go to the leaders of my community, they know nothing about it. And in fact, the NAACP just dropped their scorecard. They're voting, they just vote no on all 5 amendments. So again, if it does all the good things that this gentleman says that it does, I don't think that they would have to come to communities and be dishonest about what is actually happening. Yes, sir.
Wiley, I'm an attorney, and I know when you put a 39 or 40-page document together, and it's a whole committee of how many people, and you're dealing with so many issues, something is gonna get screwed up in the drafting, the interpretation of that. You talked to us about the fact that the proposal is a constitutional amendment.
Sure.
And if they screw something up in there,
Can't be
don't
fixed.
get it right,
Right.
how would it be fixed?
So you bring up the way that they're doing this is that they're putting this in our Constitution. And their thinking was, we're gonna put it in the Constitution so the legislature can't come behind us and then change a bunch of stuff, like they've done, in the past with like, minimum wage. Which seemed like a good idea, but they didn't do the due diligence to really put something in there of note. Now, I don't think that cannabis should be in our Constitution in any way. It's already in there, so is bingo. I don't think that this is the way that you use an additional petition. When you put something in the Constitution, it leaves it up to the legislature to make an SJR or an SJR, and then we have to find somebody. First of all, we got to pass that through. So you know how hard that's going to be just in general. We got to pass it through the House and Senate. At that point, we have to go to the Secretary of State. They have to go out to all 8 congressional districts, get signatures, say, hey, we're trying to fix this thing in this Constitution. Here's what we're trying to fix. We got to hit the signature number, go back to the SOS and say, hey, we got our signatures. They'll then run through the signatures and then decide whether or not they're going to put it on the ballot or not. And I think that's a really long process for something that was flawed from the beginning. And it's going to be a lot of money out of the state. And it's just going to be an unnecessary hoop to jump when we could have just said, no, we knew this was flawed from the beginning. It had too many holes in it. And it's just not a good idea. Now, if I'm honest with you guys, I'm a proponent for legalization, like I was a proponent for city-county merger. But again, just like city-county merger, it shouldn't be done this way. So I am a no. But in regards to what you were saying as far as the Constitution, it's putting things in our Constitution that arguably really should not be there and are extremely difficult to get out. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it just dawns on me, like, if this is gonna be a money-making industry now, from now until whenever, right? Like, that we're deciding now who can sell this, who can have permits, like, it's a permanent thing if it's in the Constitution.
Right.
It just seems like a really short-sighted decision that doesn't, to me, make any sense.
I would strongly agree with that. And again, the same people that wrote the medical marijuana piece are the people that are writing this piece, which I think is a bit of a red flag by itself. But yes, if we put it in the Constitution, it's there to stay for the most part until the legislature gets together and says we need to fix it.
All right, just hard to get everything.
All right, up next, we have our committeeman, Parker Lovelace. If you'd like to say a few words.
I'll be brief. Don't hurt me, this is the first time speaking to you all in my official capacity. Let's see, like I said, the main thing we're going to talk about is the upcoming general election is going to be November the 8th. Let you know that right now, absentee ballots are available and will be available through request to be requested through the 26th. Those have to be turned back in either in person or by mail by 7 p.m. on the 8th of November. Early voting starts on the 25th of this month. As Mike already mentioned, the closest central area is going to be, for us will be Schlafly Library. So if you can just pop in there and do what you need to do. We had the Democratic Central Committee had a fundraiser that was supposed to take place right around this time. That's been pushed back now until after the first of the year. This, instead of being actually a fall festival, it's going to be Mardi Gras theme, but you still get to wear your costume. So don't put that away. See, for those of you that contributed or collected gifts for the silent auction associated with that, would ask you to get with me after the meeting. We just want to get an inventory of everything that was collected so we can know what we have on hand, or if we need to go get some more things. The last thing I'll mention is volunteers to work the polls on the 8th. If you would, there's over on the counter back there, there's one at the other end of the room too. I guess I'll bring it over here. I thought there would be more people, but to sign up,
No one signed up yet, Parker.
Oh, okay. No one. Okay. Well, anyway, and for that, we're not paying anybody. Obviously the polls are going to be open all day from 6 to 7. So, if you're available for all or any portion of that time, even if it's just for an hour, please give us some assistance there so we can have the people that we endorse, we can encourage others to follow the 28 board standard individually. Okay. Let's see. That's all.
So is this for people to work, this is just for people to work outside of the polls?
It was right outside the polls, just to hand out the little green flyer that will have the names of the persons that we've endorsed. Okay.
Mr. Committee Man, is the central committee going to do the ballots for ward organizations?
I don't know the answer to that question, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's usually a last minute decision. It's been years past, the ballot thing.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I was going to talk about the rest of the ballot really quick. Obviously we're endorsing all the Democrats on the ballot that have Republican opponents. The club did endorse, the president of the Board of Alderman race is also on the ballot. The club has endorsed Jack Coder. There are also going to be 5 ballot questions. As Representative Price said, the NAACP, I think, said no on all of them. The Democratic Party is saying no on all of them except Amendment 3, where they don't take a position. But to just kind of run through them really quick, the first one is about granting the Missouri, amending the Constitution, again, putting more stuff in the Constitution to grant the General Assembly authority to invest, to basically expand the Treasurer's role in picking where they invest state funds. So the parties recommended no, and what they're saying is just that, passage of this bill puts more power into the hands of the treasurer, who's a Republican, and takes it out of the legislature. Again, we've talked all sorts about Amendment 3. Amendment 4 would allow the Missouri General Assembly to establish minimum funding levels for police departments across the state. The state party is recommending no, just on the grounds of kind of local control and hypocrisy of Republicans in Jeff City for arguing things like local control and then wanting to limit the power of a municipality to fund their own budgets. Amendment 5 creates another department in the state that is over the National Guard, Missouri National Guard. And it's basically, the recommendation is just no, just because it creates a chain command confusion with the National Guard. I think that's kind of weird, so I'm probably gonna maybe look at that one some more. That doesn't really make any sense, kind of why they're trying to do it then. So if anybody knows anything about that, we should be happy to hear. Yes?
Oh, I'll just say, some of my patients were in the National Guard in DC during the January 6th, and there was some planning for contingencies, and there was kind of an idea that something might happen. And so I think there was an idea that they didn't have enough control, and so there's been a large movement to get more Republican control over the National Guard so they can, if there is something like January 6th, they can pull back what would normally be a backup system that's in place.
Okay.
And I have no idea if that's this particular one, but that's a national push in reaction to some conflicts that were happening.
You bring up a very good point, and I'm extremely skeptical of Republicans wanting to make changes to the way the National Guard works
right
now. Why not do that? Yes.
Mike, years ago, I worked in the governor's office in Jeff City. The National Guard was a phone call away. I think this proposal is unnecessary. It's not like a solution in search of a problem.
Right.
But it could be a way to prevent them from coming in, or who even knows what they're thinking with the control level.
I'm not thinking what if. I'm talking from real experience. Yeah, there's not a problem with command and control. I don't see the National Guard having a seat in the cabinet. When they're military, quasi-military, should not be in a civilian role running the government. That's my main opposition to it. The governor's role, position needs to have that ability to command the National Guard, not put another cabinet.
Yeah, I just think, generally, yeah, and you bring up a good point. Why are we messing with the National Guard right now? And then the big strong no is the Constitutional Convention question. They're asking whether or not, we want to hold a Constitutional Convention to basically redo the state constitution at once. And this is just a really bad idea because it'll allow basically Republicans to rewrite the state constitution all at once. And, now, if they have bad things to do, they have to kind of make incremental change and they have to kind of go through checks and balances and they have to honestly get past their own, inefficiencies and their own kind of ineffectiveness. I mean, I think we've seen the last few years in the state legislature, we've really been saved from some terrible things happening because the Republicans couldn't get out of their own way. So I feel like we put them all together at once, maybe they can, get around that.
Anything could happen. It's unpredictable.
Yes.
No one knows what could happen. It's a black box. It's a horrible idea.
I completely agree.
Unless they start talking about recession before, then we might know.
Yeah. So that was comments from Beck just saying that it's a terrible idea. So those are the amendments. I don't know if anybody has any other comments on them or anything else on the ballot you want to talk about. I'm one of these guys who always see both sides of everything, which is kind of a curse. So I'm happy to kind of talk through stuff if anybody wants to.
Are you going to send a mailer out with our recommendation for the?
Yes. Is Heather still here? Heather is now the treasurer of the campaign committee.
I believe Heather departed about a half hour ago.
Okay. Yeah. So
I think it'll be really
On the
helpful,
other
Mike,
hand,
because
I sent
look at how
money to
few
the
people are
campaign
here, right?
Oh, yeah,
Campaign
no,
committee needs it, to put out flyers and do mailings and do what's necessary. And so if nobody goes to the campaign committee, then we can't do anything, on November 8th. So it
Who
needs
should we
money.
send that to? Heather?
Heather and
Heather's the
Art
treasurer.
are them.
Oh,
Yeah.
and the check should be made out to.
28 Ward campaign committee. Campaign. Yep.
To 59, what is it, 53?
I get that.
Honestly, before you write a check, call Heather because she was wanting to send out a mailer, and I think she had the exact kind of price to do it. So.
The campaign committee needs the money.
All right. Any other questions on anything? Any questions about what's going on in the city or anything? Okay.
Good job.
I don't know if the trash pickup in my neighborhood. We've got dumpsters, driveway dumpsters are overflowing.
Are you putting them into CSV and then honestly copying me and Ron Coleman on it? And then service request?
I didn't ask for it to be picked up, I asked what's going on with it.
Well, so, they're getting, it's a staffing issue with the trucks. And like I said before, our hands are kind of tied on the options we can do. To get the routes, to get another trucks. We've ordered them. The dumpsters have come in nice. But, and unfortunately, our neighbors too, not really, but, especially down the street from Oliver, you have instances where colleges are moving in and out all at once. That it's just, it really puts a lot of stress on the trash system that then like a week or two, it kind of. So, I don't know, what are your thoughts on roll carts? Because that's the other, the city's still debating whether or not to send roll carts.
Gold carts are incredibly expensive.
I don't want to start with this.
And will they fit under the wires? I think we should go back to having.
All right, thank you.
Shambles screwed this up on that. Shambles did that?
You weren't great